Hello folks, this is Steve AB4L. Most of you are not going to be interested in this. This is a technical article about FFmpeg EQ and a particular filter function. FFmpeg EQ library is how I do my video editing. I write scripts. I call on functions that are available in the libraries. I don't use a tool that's an interface. I actually script my videos. One that's been of interest to me for a long time is called EQ. And EQ can modify a number of things, such as you change the contrast in the video recording, make it different than what the camera originally recorded it as. Or the brightness, which is not the same thing. Or the saturation, which has to do with the flavor of the colors. And then there's something called gamma, which kind of combines some of the other three. Now this particular page gives the default values for each of those. Contrast has a default value of 1, and it can be anything from a -1000 to a +1000. I can't imagine that, but brightness just goes from -1 to +1, so they're not on the same scales, which means that the functions were written probably by different people. And when you get into the inner way that video is actually in the data, they're very different from each other. Saturation goes from 0 to 3, so it's all positive. And gamma can go from 0.1 to 10. 0.1, but not 0. Gamma is the one I adjust the most often. Now, what is this about? First, I'm going to play a video that has to do with this. It's 1 minute long. I recorded it just out here. The gamma value of the recording is 1.0. Now I intentionally modified the video and changed the gamma to 0.6. It got darker. Now we're back to the standard. That's what I meant by implicit gamma 1.0. Now we've brightened it up, washed it out with gamma 1.4 as a contrasting example. Now we're back to the base recording the way it came out of the camera. But now I'm using contrast, and I made it 1.8, and it's darker, but the way the colors are and the detail is different than doing it with gamma. So there's an implicit gamma 1.0 and a contrast 1.0. That's the video to demonstrate changing the value. Now, what I didn't know before is that I didn't have to break the recording time sequence into pieces in order to change like the gamma value. I might have something that part of the recording is that I show you I want to change the gamma because it would make it easier to see certain things. I thought in the past I had to chop the video up and then do the gamma on that one piece and then concatenate them back together. But what I learned is the EQ function that has these aspects, it can be time stretch activated. Now I'm going to show you the code that I use for this. Now this is the way the script is, and I'm going to put some spacing in just to make it be easier to see. The video input first is subjected to gamma 0.6, but here's the key one. Enable that modification using a function called between timeline, between 10 seconds and 20 seconds. So it doesn't actually, now I didn't break this into pieces. This is one continuous recording, and what I didn't know was I could say do an enable function, because this is timeline, the function is timeline sensitive, and I can selectively say change the gamma to 0.6. We assume that the recording's at 1.0. So let me start the video again. Implicit gamma 1.0. As I'm doing something to the stretch of the 1 minute video, for the first segment of time, I'm not making any change. And then I authorize the EQ to do a gamma of 0.6 for a short period of time. It's a 1 minute recording between 10 seconds and 20 seconds. Now, the key thing is I didn't chop this up. So once it finishes that, I skipped it too far. Let me just play it. Once I'm not modifying the gamma, it leaves the recording alone, and it's at presumed gamma 1.0. So gamma is also a relative function. And then I told it, and this is what the next line is, make it 1.4. But then I decided to try, does it also work for the contrast function, subfunctionality? So I say, give me a contrast of 1.8 between 40 seconds and 50 seconds, and I get the same thing. Now, it doesn't modify the underlying implicit gamma 0.1. It only affects gamma, excuse me, I'm saying that backwards. The gamma, however it does that, whatever that is, remains 1.0. And its contrast, whatever that is, and however video is encoded, which I have no idea. It's a big mystery to me. So this will simplify some of my editing in the future. Now, for those of you who may actually do FFmpeg EQ, it was easier to encode the sequence on separate lines. And to that you say, this says take this video input, and then I can separate some action from further different actions by doing the label and then go to the next line. And this is just how the software interprets the script. And so it was just easier to work this out on 3 separate lines, parallel structure. But in reality, the encoding could all be on one line, and the different gamma contrast of the EQ changes are simply separated by commas. All right? Remember, this is a technical presentation. See, I've got all three of them on that top line. But for practical coding by a human, now you can't have those spaces in there. I did that for the purposes of making it clear what I was talking about. You can't have spaces in between the lines. And that's the end of this technical talk. And in summary, EQ and presumably some other kinds of functions also that are timeline modifiable by the enable between functionality. If you go after a particular function, you can do it for a short period of time, but then when it's not doing it, it's simply, the machinery simply falls back to the underlying implicit default value. I thought you had to do it in separate video functions and run them separate and then concatenate them, and you don't. You can actually do it on one single timeline, gross timeline. Steve AB4 just an idiot learning something new, running his mouth about FFmpeg, which he loves. And if you think that FFmpeg is not important, I would say 90% at least of the stuff you see as video presentations on the web, whether it's YouTube or any other place, this is the underlying editing library. It's that pervasive and powerful. Saying see you in 73.